Thank you, everybody.
All right, we are almost at that part of the afternoon where the drinks are being poured upstairs. So we're on the home stretch. But I also wanted to thank all of you for coming along today. I want to take the opportunity for you to give Maureen another big round of applause. You've done a brilliant job. A thank you to our sponsors, Oricon, of course, UTS, and the Customer Experience Company. Please give your round of applause to them. My takeout, for want of a better word, of this whole forum was a question by the lovely lady sitting in the middle there about the question to the Royal Australian Air Force. I think your question was around the serendipitous nature around how the Air Force got to use design. And I sat here thinking to myself, that in itself is probably the big problem that we have, is that design just isn't being understood in the way that it should be understood. And I was sitting here thinking, imagine if that same encounter happened with our Minister for Health, and all of a sudden she became a big fan of design in the same way that the Royal Australian Air Force is. Our Minister for Transport, our Minister for Innovation, our Prime Minister had that same encounter and started embracing design in the same way that you are. And I think that is ultimately where we need to one day get. And I'm hoping that we can be here in a few years' time and actually have the PM up here as one of the keynote speakers talking about how design has actually transformed Australia. To me, that would just be unreal. I'm going to introduce you now to Gerhard Vorster, who's our patron, to make some closing remarks. But before I do, hands up anyone who's seen Suits on Netflix. Okay, you'll know that Harvey Specter is the best closer in the business, right? This guy takes him to town, so please, Gerhard Vorster, up to you.
Thanks, Brandon. Can you hear me without this microphone?
Yes.
Okay, otherwise I will shout the ones in front to death. Zorba the Greek. How many of you actually have seen that movie? Isn't that wonderful? I feel very welcome here Sunday. And you'll remember that close. Damn it, boss. I love you too much not to tell you. You've got everything but one thing. Madness. Every man needs a touch of madness, otherwise he'll never cut the rope and be free. And I think when you start to think about innovation, which is per definition something new, it's not something old, it's not something proven, you need a touch of madness to cut the rope and not just to do what everybody else has done. And I think that's the crucial ingredient that is still missing in many of us. It's the comfort and the confidence to have that touch of madness. So I look at that always, every morning when I get up. My wife actually tells me I've got too much of that. Especially now that I'm retired, I've got time to be mad as well. And it's not good in its own right. But I think that's so important. So before I close a day like today, which is so difficult to do with so many various insights, but I've tried. I've attempted something to just give you something to take away. I just want to make two very brief announcements. Firstly, the first announcement is, and I'm sure that many of you would agree with me, the two words that kill innovation the most effectively, what are they? Prove it. Prove it. Business case. Prove it. How can you prove something that doesn't exist? How can you prove it? You're going into a self-fulfilling prophecy here of trying to create spreadsheets, and then if I could have been a millionaire for every spreadsheet millionaire made, I would have really. The fact is, you can't prove it. You have to try it. And trying is what pioneering is all about. And Good Design Australia is all about encouraging that. So what we've decided to do is we've decided to bring up an award, the Good Design Australia Pioneers Award. It will be issued next year at this forum, but there it is. Now, because we try something new, we will be your custodians of this for the next year. we'll claim that we've earned it now. But what we have to do is we have to try that, and we would like to encourage you to take this concept of design into your business, into the environment that you're in, and just go and try it. It is fine to try. It's fine to fail, but don't lose the ship whilst you fail. Think about it, and I'll talk about it in a minute. So we're going to do that. That's the first announcement I wanted to make. The second thing is just all about, if you look at complex problems, wicked problems, which is things that require design. There's a practical element, or a practical example on the table right now. So what I would like to do is, Jennifer Sanders, where are you? Right there at the back. If you see Jennifer, go and talk to her afterwards. But here's the issue at stake. And I'm not having a view on this, I'm just putting a complex problem to you. The Powerhouse Museum, which is just down the road here, is a core ingredient of actually creating an experience for people in Sydney. The current thinking is that it should be lifted and moved to Parramatta. Now I go back to Sam's comment a little bit earlier. The true sign of intelligence is if you can have two opposing ideas and keep it in your mind simultaneously and still operate and actually come into a better solution. So there's an organization or there's a group called the Powerhouse Museum Alliance. They've got a website, powerhousemuseumalliance.com. You can have a look at that. That is actually arguing that there could be a better idea. So talk to Jennifer about this, but also go and look at this and offer your view on what you think is the right thing. It's not one or the other. How do you deal with complex problems in different ways? And that's the challenge. So let me close briefly by talking about what we've heard today. At the Good Design Australia, we have this mantra of we believe in a better Australia and a better world through design. And for me, that's quite personal. I do believe in a better world and a better Australia, but through design. Now, a gentleman that Sam introduced me many years ago, Roberto Ganti, one stage told me that when you look at design, often design is followed by change management. And he would say that if anything requires change management, there's probably something wrong with the design. Now, isn't that the gauntlet down for us as designers? If you require change management, you probably have something wrong with the design. And I think it's quite a profound element to think about when we think about design and how do we create this better world through design. It's a huge responsibility. So what I would like to do is to enlist. Is that the correct word or is it conscript? I'm not sure. But what I would like to do is to enlist the support of this audience to continue to do that and to create a better world, a better Australia through design, but design that is meaningful, design that's pleasurable, design that actually gets absorbed. That's important. So in doing that, that means that we have to be the custodians of a system. We have to be the custodians of elements that creates that. And we have to create conditions where design has a meaningful role. And I've identified in the discussions today 5 elements of such system. And I just briefly want to take you through those 5 elements. The first element is the element of vision. Second element is the element of pride. The third element is the element of accessibility. The fourth element is the element of action. And the last element is the element of resilience. So let me just briefly take you through what I've heard today in these discussions that we had. And the first one is vision. And I love it. I think Maureen raised it. Vision costs nothing. Isn't that beautiful? Vision costs nothing. However, you can't go and Google the future. It is not available. So we have to go and try things. That is what design is all about. And then Ian Harper led us down that road of saying, design is the key ingredient that connects creativity and innovation. And he made a very strong case for why innovation is the cornerstone of productivity and standards of living in Australia and in the world for that matter. But design is the catalyst. It is the element that actually connects creativity and innovation, which I found really, really intriguing. That is a huge responsibility. Now, if you take that and you say that we are not just in a local environment, we're in a global competitiveness environment, and that global competition, the competition element came out from the panel a little bit earlier. One has to realize that whatever we design needs to be globally competitive. Roger Martin from the Rockman Business School used to say to us when we worked with him, said that there are only two attributes that actually defines global success if you want to expand. If an Australian company wants to go global, there are two things that they found in common. The first thing is a highly competitive local environment. The second thing is incredibly discerning and informed customers. So when we design things here, we have to design it as if it is to perform the best in the world. And for that, we need higher competition. All of us, whether we are competitors directly or indirectly, we need to raise the water here, because that is what's going to get us to a vision that actually works. And then the last element of the vision, for me, and I said it to some of you over tea time as well, what just dawned upon me, and when Gerhard spoke about it, it just became so clear to me again, is that fundamentally, every business that's here, every government department that's here, we have two purposes. We do whatever we do. We're lawyers, we're accountants, we're designers, but we're also a talent investment house. Australia is a talent investment house. Our people, and especially our young people, have the option to go anywhere and go and explore the return on their investment, which is their time, anywhere else. So if we don't think about ourselves as a talent investment house, we're going to miss a big deal as far as innovation is concerned. So that for me is under this vision elements that pan out. The second thing is pride. How good was it when Stuart looked at that video and he stood back and he said, man, oh man, it still thrills me. Isn't that good? You can see that there's pride. When Jerome spoke about Project Jericho, you could see that sense of pride, that sense of ownership. That's crucial in design. Design is not a third-party activity. It's something that matters to us as individuals. And that is also the confidence that one needs to keep on tinkering. Otherwise, the status quo would become too comfortable. Pride is associated with confidence, and you will continue to tinkle. And it's personal. It is not something you can outsource. It's not something that you advise on. It's personal. For me, one of the big wows of today was to get that sense of pride of people that have done that and have seen the benefit of that. Let me move to the third element, accessibility. How good has it been to, within 7 minutes, reach your 70,000 crowdfunding target? Man, the crowds are powerful. And we are absurd to think that we, as individuals, or even we in our organizations, know more than the whole world knows out there. And everything we do today, we do according to a certain code. But everything we do today at some stage was a mystery. Do you think all the mysteries of the world have been solved or even identified? I don't think so. So what are we going to do to actually live in that area? And how are we going to access all these little signals that are out there? That is what accessibility is all about. That's what we will have to do. And we will have to do more and more of that. And with youth, and Jan raised it with us, and we've seen it when Ali spoke about their SHAPE program, playfulness comes in it. Baby boomers like me think that business is supposed to be serious. You know what? It's not. That's not how people get the best return for their talent investment. So playfulness is something, it's a skill. We talk about T skills, and then we always think about the youngsters need to equip themselves with the stuff that we have. Nonsense. We have to equip ourselves with new T skills, which appreciate things like playfulness, that appreciates the role of technology, that appreciates the fact that we actually don't know it all. T skilling is as important to us as senior people as it is to the younger people. I love the notion of economics of agglomeration. Quite frankly, I haven't heard it before, so that was new to me. I've heard about economies of scale. I've heard of these economies of scope, which is saying go become client-centric. But the economies of agglomeration actually brings a very interesting design element for me there. And that is the design element of final assembly. We all can work with so much that's out there that we don't have to own, that we don't even have to create, but we can finally do the final assembly. And that becomes a crucial ingredient of better models. And then I just want to briefly touch on the accessibility of research. And for me, that's a two-way thing. Jerome, I think, made the point of we'll be amazed if we go to universities, we get them to talk to us, to see how much there is. Now we know that collaboration is the one area that the Australian economy keeps on struggling with. Having said that, the challenge back to us as business, to us as designers, to us as lawyers, to us as accountants, the challenge is, are we doing what we can to go for it, to go and look for it. There's research and there's search. And are we doing enough to search for what has happened there? This is a two-way street. It's not good enough to say that they don't want to give us more or the universities don't publish enough. We have to go and search for that. And that is what enlisting in this actually means. Let's go out actively and look for what it is. Because we have to make it eventually real for our people. And the other favorite alibi that we get associated with this change is, great idea, but then the people didn't want to follow. Marty Linsky at the Harvard Law School has a beautiful saying. He says that leadership is often about disappointing your own people at the rate at which they can absorb it. But with that goes responsibility again. Change is not a natural state of mind. People don't like being changed. As leaders, we have to disappoint them at the rate at which they can absorb. And then you move the organization. And if you move too fast, you're not a good leader. Accessibility is as much about the process as it is about what we do in there. Second last one is action. And how refreshing was it to listen to Jan when she spoke about young people, how easily and how readily they mobilize. How their value systems are actually probably stronger than mine was. If you asked me at the age of 19, what do you want? I probably wanted a girlfriend and a car. Now, and here are people that care about education, that care about socioeconomic elements, that actually go out of their way and do things. And those are so profoundly different, but such a wonderful asset to mobilize if we do that well. And that is where open sourcing also is becoming a norm. That's the way that things work. People open source more and more. However, it is interesting, and I love the military analogy again, of open source the non-classified, but then do in the classified environment, you actually do the final assembly and you create the differentiation. And I think that is what businesses need to figure out, is how do we use open sourcing, but also how do we bring it together and create differentiation? Because fundamentally we all still compete. Prototyping is the currency for action. In the design space, prototyping is what it's all about. Prototyping doesn't mean you do stupid things. But prototyping does mean you do uncertain things. You manage your assumptions and you drive. Prototyping doesn't mean you bet the farm on day one. Prototyping does mean that in H3, that we've seen often, you actually have a whole portfolio of things that needs to go through. And I think as enlisted people, we need to insist on a set of prototypes in our organization. If you can't name the set of prototypes in your organization and your division, you are not living the dream here. That's not what it is all about. And then the last point is just resilience. Resilience actually does take also personal energy. There are always antibodies in every organization. Whether we like it or not, they're going to be there. Some of them are actually quite powerful. Some of them are actually at very, very high levels. However, that is why these processes need to be endorsed by leaders and it needs to be systematic. Deming always said, if you can't describe what you do as a process, you don't know what you're doing. If you can't describe how you are applying design and how you're applying innovation in your organization, you actually don't know what you're doing. You really hope. You just hope for the best. But there's another element of resilience that I just want to briefly touch on. And that's an element in a knowledge economy that I think is often overlooked. Queen Victoria, at one stage, told the story that she had two dinner parties which were quite close to each other. The one with William Gladstone, who was at that stage the leader of the Liberals in the UK, and then the later one with Ben Disraeli, who was the leader of the Conservatives. She said after the dinner with Gladstone, she walked out there and she thought Gladstone was the smartest guy in the world. She said then she had the dinner with Ben Disraeli and she walked out of that dinner feeling that she was the smartest woman in the world. You know, and that's the challenge of the knowledge economy. Because we know stuff, we think we're right. We want to tell people how smart we are. We want to tell our own people how smart we are. We want to tell our friends how smart we are. That is not what resilience is all about. Resilience is not just about being told. It's actually that ability to step back and not know it all, and to ask the questions, and to be resilient in the fact that you actually have to acknowledge that you don't know it all, whilst the knowledge economy actually drives us to that. Knowledge actually can be the antibody for us as people in the knowledge economy. So I know that some of you would have said, so what about that C word, culture? In my mind, if we take these 5 elements that I spoke about, the vision, the whole notion of pride, accessibility and action, and resilience, and you start to live that becomes the culture. And the culture is something you feel. The culture reflects your behaviors. I hope that events like this, and especially this event, and the fact that we've announced a new Good Design Australia Prize for the pioneers, would help in our small way to be a catalyst for driving this journey forward, but get people enlisted that are passionate about it, that actually believes in it, and then actually go in and do it without looking for alibis, taking the organizations that we're in at the rate at which they can absorb, but we take them forward. And then in 5 years' time, I think the movement would have taken over. From our side, thank you very much for attending. This is always a great highlight of our year with our Summer Good Design Awards. I hope that you have all learned something. I have learned a lot today, and I hope that you can take some of these elements back and make change happen as we should. And by design, create a better Australia and a better world for that matter. Thank you very much.